Welcome to episode 86 of the Family Answer Man podcast, and today we're talking about coercive control from a biblical worldview on the Family Answer Man podcast. I'm your host, David Orgis, and I'm here with Dr. Mark Crosby, pastor, educator, marriage and family therapist, and our resident expert here on the Family Answer Man. We tackle tough questions on the Family Answer Man that families face, and we discuss practical solutions that really do work. This podcast is not a therapy session, and we're not able to give specific advice to your situations, but we do believe that mental and spiritual health are very serious issues, and that family dynamics can be and often are very complicated. So, for in-depth answers to your questions, we encourage you to seek professional counsel for your specific circumstances. If you would take a second right now to subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode of the Family Answer Man. And if you're listening on podcast, if you will just take a moment to follow, to rate, and review us on your favorite podcast app, really does help us out. We appreciate it a lot. And if our content has helped you at all, please share the Family Answer Man with your family and your friends so they can join you on this journey of building stronger, healthier, happier families. Now, if you want to get in touch with us and send in your questions, you can send those in at familyanswerman@liveoak.church, familyanswerman@liveoak.church. We love to hear from you guys and answer your questions. Dr. Mark, we have a big question today and a very interesting topic, coercive control that some people might not immediately understand or recognize what they're hearing when they hear that phrase. But do you feel like this is something that is something that we see in our lives and our culture a lot, or is this a pretty narrow scope? Yeah,
it's perhaps more prevalent than we realize. It is what I call that silent pathological interaction that people often have sometimes in their dating relationship, maybe even in their engagement, definitely among intimate partners, if you will, but also very much so among married couples. And so what happens is that you have this situation where one person, namely in most cases the husband, has this pathological desire to have full, complete control over his spouse, to the point to where she almost feels as if she is in relational prison.
Okay.
And so in other words, she has lost her freedoms, has lost her ability to choose certain things, even simple things like what she wears, what she eats, when she has dinner made, or when she can, or where she can go, or where she can visit, who she can see, and the list can go on. It's this extreme control that, again, I want to believe that is not, extremely prevalent, but it's more prevalent than we realize.
Okay.
And it's both in the church and outside the church. And again, one of the problems that we're seeing is that a lot of these men who are these extremely controlling individuals will oftentimes use the Bible, unfortunately, to prove their point. That the wife is to be submissive to me, and she's to be, under my jurisdiction, and I'm to have full control over her, and I am to be the leader, and all these things. And even though the Word of God definitely teaches those things, not to the level, not to the degree that this person is interpreting. And so, unfortunately, this coercive control finds itself both in the church and outside the church, far in ways that God never intended, I will argue, and far more, again, taking it far further, I should say, than God ever intended for it to go.
Okay. So, control, but as you said, coercive control, which there's a level of dominance there that's being exploited.
It's very malignant.
Yeah. So that leads to the question for today. And again, familyanswerman@liveoak.church. You can email us your questions. The question says, my daughter's been married for only a few months, but I'm worried. Her husband made her quit her job, tells her how to dress, and forbids her to go anywhere without him. She's also discovered spy cameras, tracking devices, and computer software so she can be monitored. Yep. He also will not allow us to come over, nor will he allow her to come see us. He's rude to her publicly and has insulted her in front of us. What's going on, and what can we do?
Wow. So again, this sounds like it has all the symptoms of what we call coercive control. Again, coercive control is defined as a pattern or maybe even a strategy where a intimate partner, in many cases the husband, threats, brings some sort of intimidation, isolation, humiliation, manipulation, and even physical abuse to their spouse, namely to their wife. Evan Stark basically coined this definition or this description years ago as a pattern of behavior experienced, again, among intimate partners. Generally, in most cases, husband and wife. It also happens between boyfriend, girlfriend. It happens between those who are engaged, those who are living together, and there's many, of course, I'm sure, combinations. But the point is that it's this individual, namely in most cases the man, who has this desire to have full control over his girlfriend, his wife, his fiancée. And so again, this pattern of behavior is designed to isolate a person, making them dependent, completely dependent upon the man. In most cases, making them dependent for financial support, for their general welfare, even for food. So in other words, this person, this male, this husband, this boyfriend, this individual is basically saying, you must have, I must have complete domination over you, complete control over you, and you must have, again, complete allegiance to me. And there's all of this, all these factors working, whereas the person who is being controlled loses their independence.
Okay.
They lose their goals, they lose their dreams, and they are primarily being controlled, being exploited, being humiliated. And so again, this person, therefore, mainly the wife, girlfriend, lives in this constant state of fear.
Yeah, it sounds like there is no option, even if you wanted things to change. All those things have been stripped from that person. There's no power in the relationship where they couldn't even change if they wanted to.
Right, and fear now dominates the home. It dominates the relationship. The wife, does what she does out of fear. She, submits to him out of fear, not out of love and respect. The girlfriend doesn't say no out of fear. And so fear dominates this relationship. And so again, 95% of all domestic abuse survivors have experienced this. So when you hear their story, when you go to the woman's shelter, or when you listen to maybe someone in a counseling setting or in a pastoral church setting, and you hear the story of these individuals, they begin by saying how they were exploited, how they were manipulated, how they were coerced, how they were basically told, if you don't do what I tell you, this is going to happen to you, or you're going to lose everything you've ever wanted or lived for. And maybe in some cases, they may even threaten, if they have children, threaten the lives of their children, or they may even threaten their parents, especially their parents are elderly or are fragile or unable to, take care of themselves or defend themselves even. And so there's this amount of control that comes in that is very destructive, very violent, very volatile. And the sad thing is that it's people, maybe in some cases, for the pastors who are listening, sitting in your pew.
Wow.
Okay. It's maybe, the people that you work with. It's the people, maybe it could be your daughter or your granddaughter or your niece that's experiencing this. And the thing is that most people would never recognize it because on the surface, everything looks fine. They have a nice house. They go to church. She drives a nice car. He drives a nice car. He sends his kids to the best schools. And so on the surface, everything looks, like, Mayberry, everything looks fine. But when you begin to hear their story, when you begin to see what's going on behind closed doors, when you begin to see the red flags that are coming up, like this dad or this mom, whoever wrote this in, and you're basically saying, here's some things that I'm seeing.
Right.
They can't come over. We can't go over there. She's discovered spyware, on her phone. She was told to leave her job. These are all symptoms of someone who's saying, I'm going to control my spouse, and I'm going to isolate them, which is a very important factor in all this. I'm going to isolate them from everyone else. It is very cult-like.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like your cult leader is going to do this with dozens or hundreds of people.
Right.
whereas this is in just one single relationship.
Exactly. So it's very cult-like. We're going to isolate you from anyone and everyone, your friends, your family, your co-workers, your job. We're going to isolate you, and you're going to do my bidding. You're going to listen only to me, and I will tell you everything you will say or do. And there's this crazy control that starts to take place.
Why is the isolation so important?
Because again, the cult leader, if you will, the coercive controller doesn't want to be discovered. They don't want to be discovered. They know down deep that what they're doing is manipulative, exploitive, etc., and even dangerous, and they don't want to be discovered.
So they know that if this person's not isolated, they have other connections, that other people are going to see the red flags and be able to point them out.
And two, if they're not isolated, they have resources. They have places they can go. They have people they can call on. They have things or individuals that they can share what's going on. And so if they're not isolated, then all of those avenues are open to them. But if we isolate them, then they cannot go to these places or talk to these people. And so the thing I want to basically say, especially on this program, especially to our audience who's listening, which is primarily Christians and people who attend church, and many pastors hopefully are listening to this program, churches are not immune to coercive control, meaning pastors beware that this may be happening in your congregation. You may be having people, men especially, in your congregation that are very coercive in their control over their spouse. And so, and not only that, but pastors beware that this may happen among your peers. There are pastors that will take on a very coercive control mindset, not only in their family, but also maybe in their church, where they're going to control anything and everything, anyone and everyone. I've had people come to me say, hey, look, is it natural, is it normal for your pastor to ask you where you went on vacation and how much money you spent? Is it natural and normal for your pastor to ask you, when did you get that brand new TV or that brand new car, and how much money did you spend on it, and why didn't you use that money to tithe to the church?
If anybody's wondering, the answer to that is no, it's not normal.
But that happens, and certain parts of our country and certain populations experience this. And so coercive control has some of these major factors. Factor number one, as we said before, there's a lot of threat and intimidation. Threat and intimidation is perhaps the number one symptom of coercive control. Number two, isolating the person from their family, friends, coworkers, and even counselors. In other words, the person who's involved in coercive control wants to isolate their spouse, as we said before, from family, from friends, because they don't want to be found out, nor do they want their spouse to have any other resource. Sometimes this happens gradually.
Okay.
This may not happen up front. This may not happen, after the first date, but it happens gradually. And pretty soon it becomes more and more apparent that this person struggles with wanting to control other people. And as we've said many times in this program, I will argue that wanting to control someone else is part of our sin nature. You see this in government, you see this in cults, you see this in relationships, you see this among church members, you see this, in various boards and agencies. We want to control, if the pastor buys a new pair of socks or not. We want to control, what the pastor drives. We want to control where the pastor's kids go to school. We want to control if the pastor's wife, plays the piano or not. And so the point is that when that gets out of hand, it becomes problematic. And so, again, it happens gradually, and sometimes as it happens, it grows with each passing week, month, and year.
Is that why you can end up, read through the question, and I'm sure somebody said, wow, this has been a few months. Like, didn't you see any of this before they got married?
Yeah.
Is that the case often, that it creeps up and it's gradual, and then
exactly.
A marriage is official?
We'll talk about this more in a moment, but you're exactly right. It's a gradual, but in the very beginning, there's kind of a bait and switch. Because remember, these individuals do not come across as mean and angry and controlling. They're very charming. They're very charismatic. They're very gracious in a lot of areas for a lot of people. But again, there's that bait and switch. And so what happens is they begin to restrict, though, their spouse and sometimes even their own kids from access from any public places. You know, you're not going to go to Walmart without me or whatever. You're not going to go to church without me. You're not going to go to the gym without me. You're not going to go, you know, to the movies without me. You're not going to go shopping without me. And so they restrict access from any public places. In some cases, the spouse will isolate them from their job. I don't want you working. I'm going to provide for you. I'm going to take care of everything. You don't have to go to work. All your friends wish they could stay home. You know, you're really lucky to have me. I'm going to make sure that you stay home and you don't have to work. You just take care of the house. You just take care of the kids and you don't have to work. And because that's how it's supposed to be. And so again, in many cases, I would argue there may be, you know, some substance to that, you know, situation. But for the coercive controller, what they're doing is they're trying to isolate their spouse and try to make their spouse dependent upon them. And so again, what happens is that in some cases, the abusive partner may even sabotage the job. They may even show up at work and say all kind of things, or they may call the boss and say, "How dare you make my wife work after 5 o'clock? How dare you make her work overtime? How dare you call her on the weekend? How dare you do this?" And so what happens is that the abusive partner may sabotage the job of his spouse. They always monitor the whereabouts with all the tracking apps and spyware. They're constantly tracking. So they will call him sometimes to see if they're going to be lied to. And they may call and say, "Where are you?" And the lady may say, "Well, I'm just leaving the store." "Oh no, the app says you're in front of the gas station." Right. You're lying to me. Why are you lying to me? Who are you seeing? And so there's this level of paranoia that takes place by the controlling partner. They will also restrict, again, what we call normal activities. They won't allow you, in this case, in this question, they won't allow their spouse to visit their family or go to the gym or go to the church or go shopping or have, coffee with a friend or whatever it may be. And so they restrict normal activities. Also, they stalk them. If the wife says, "Well, I'm just going to go, to the store," and the husband may say, "Fine, go ahead and go to the store." And then after she's gone for 3 minutes, he gets in his car and stalks her to see if she really went to the store like she said. Man. And if she makes a detour, or if she, goes to another store than what she said, or whatever, or she doesn't get there because she's talking to a friend or whatever on the phone, he stalks and then he punishes her for quote unquote lying to him. He restricts in some cases, what they eat and how they dress. They're very, very condescending. So if the controlling spouse feels like his wife is overweight or whatever, he will put her on a strict diet. He will tell her what she can eat. And if she likes to dress a certain way, he will tell her how she can and cannot dress, how long her skirt can be or whatever. And so the point is that there's that constant control. Not only that, but they're always calling. "Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you now?" Maybe sometimes even videoing them. And so again, there's lots of verbal abuse in the situation. Yeah. You hear the words from the controlling spouse: "Prove to me, prove to me, prove to me where you were, prove to me who I was there, prove to me what you said." And so again, and then they say things that are very cryptic and very dark, such as, "If something happened to you, I could get away with it because I know all the law enforcement. If something happened to you, I could get away with it because the pastor really does believe I'm a good person," or whatever it may be. And so they're very cryptic and they're very dark, and they plant these seeds in the lives of their spouse. And so again, people say, "Well, who does this? Who does this sort of thing? What crazy person does this?" And the thing is, remember, they're very charismatic. They're very generous. They're very charming. And so the individual, again, if we had to give them a diagnosis, this is the antisocial personality disordered person, which we talked about before, which again, the old generic label is the psychopath. Sometimes it's the malignant narcissist. And so these individuals, these abusers, if you will, they get excited about causing fear and control. They get excited about punishing and humiliating and depriving people because they feel like that empowers them, that it gives them a sense of control. They like creating dependency. They want everybody around them to be dependent upon them. It gives them a sense of purpose, if you will, in a very negative, dark sort of way. These individuals have a lot of psychopathy, which is a fancy word basically of, again, this psychopathic personality type where there is very little or no remorse, and there's no sympathy, and there's no empathy, and there's no sense of grace in their life. So again, so the personality types, as we said before, would be the antisocial personality and the malignant narcissist. So again, they lack empathy. They are motivated by power. They love to control. These individuals cannot regulate their stress. And by that I mean this, they're very stressed out individuals in many cases, maybe through their job or through other demands upon them. And so because they cannot regulate their stress in a healthy way, this is their way of releasing, if you will, their pent-up anger and stress and paranoia. And they again have this very abusive interaction with people around them, primarily their spouse, their kids, and maybe in some cases, maybe even a parent or a mom or a dad. But they have this way of regulating their stress in this very unhealthy way by trying to control those around them. They're hypersensitive. In other words, you cannot say anything about them that would be considered critical. You cannot say anything about them that would be considered non-flattering. So they're very hypersensitive because they're insecure. And these individuals are often insecure, and eventually they will be described by others as being arrogant. So again, as we've said before, and this is something that pastors need to hear, counselors need to hear, they have charm. These abusers are charming. These abusers are very charismatic, and they use their charm and they use their charisma to hide their own paranoia and cruelty. And so this is one reason why they may be sitting in your pew. They may be working, next to you, the next office. They may be the ones that are the life of the party, at the company picnic or whatever. But they use their charm and their charisma to hide their paranoia and their cruelty. And like most things, this is on a spectrum, okay? You have maybe on one end of the spectrum where the person who's being abused, if you will, is just dealing with lots of confusion, lots of contempt, lots of criticism. But on the other end of the spectrum, they could be living a very dangerous, lethal, and even deadly relationship, or being a dangerous, lethal, and deadly relationship. And so this is on a spectrum like most things. And so again, here's the problem. The problem is, of coercive control, as we've said before, it's not easily seen. Most people will walk, by the nice home or visit, the nice couple sitting on the front row of the church and see nothing as being wrong at all. Few people believe it. So if the wife, in most cases, if the wife does say to maybe the pastor's wife, this is what's happening, and the pastor's wife may say, oh dear, you've got a beautiful home. Look, you dress so nice. He's such a good provider. And look at the car. You drive such a nice car, and you're in church. Dear, everything's okay. You just need a little more time and you be a nice, obedient, submissive wife, and you'll be just fine.
Wow.
And so the point is, very few people believe the woman who's caught up in coercive control. And there's very little that law enforcement can do. Because again, if you call 911 and say, my husband won't let me see my parents, my husband won't let me go shopping, my husband won't, let me, eat a hamburger, the 911 operator is going to go, well, that's a relational issue. There's no law against that, And so again, there's very little law enforcement can do. It's not easily seen. Very few people believe it. Again, it's very exploitive and very manipulative. And again, in many cases, it causes extreme anxiety, extreme depression, and also substance abuse. So the person who's being controlled sometimes may get involved in alcoholism or drug addiction or take prescription medications or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And again, as we said before, 95% of all cases, it's women. They're the ones who are being abused. Now, here's the question that many ask, and you kind of alluded to this a while ago. How do they get involved? How does a woman, find herself in this kind of relationship? Well, number one, they're love bombed in the beginning. The controller, remember, they're abused. I mean, they're charming. They're charismatic before they show any abuse. So they're love bombed, and then there's a bait and switch. Second of all, many women here fear disappointing. They don't want to disappoint their spouse. They don't want to disappoint their parents. Some refuse to see red flags. Yeah. That mom, that dad, that best friend, that older sister basically told them, this guy's not good for you. Mm-hmm. This guy's not good for you. This guy, I don't have a good feeling. And so in many cases, the girlfriend, the wife will refuse to see the red flags. There's also some codependency tendencies here. Mm-hmm. I need to be needed. I can change him. I'll make him a better person. And then there's that fear of personal failure. They get caught up in the marriage. They get caught up in the engagement. They begin to see these things. But, if I bail now, if I divorce now, if I stop the engagement.
What does that say about me?
What does that say about me? And that means I'm a failure, which means there's lots of self-doubt. Mm-hmm. A lot of these women have a lot of self-doubt. A lot of these women are naive until they're, in this situation far deeper than they ever thought they would be. Many hope it'll get better. If I just stay in this, if I just am nicer, if I just do more, if I just, submit more, if I just, am more obedient, then things will get better. Again, as we said already, no one believes them. Yeah. They may tell, a friend or a coworker or even a relative, hey, what's going on? And they will say, that can't be. He's such a nice person. He teaches Sunday school. He's the deacon of the whatever. He would never do that. No one believes them. And then there's a fear for their own safety if they do say anything. Or maybe they fear the safety of their kids or their parents. So what to look for? What to look for as a family member. So if you're a family member like this dad, here's some things to look for. Number one, a change in behavior. Is your spouse, is your daughter, your granddaughter, your niece, or you see a change in their behavior? Are they looking depressed and unkept when they are in social settings? Is there a lot of drama happening in the family, in the home? Are they no longer as involved as they used to be? They're not calling as often. When you see them, they're always walking on eggshells around their spouse. You also observe public embarrassment. And also you see how their spouse ruins special events. They ruin the Thanksgiving meal. They ruin the Christmas celebration. They ruin, the family reunion. So what to do? So if you're a woman and you're caught up in this, number one, find a therapist. Now, in order to do that, you may have to go to your local library and use their computer because remember, you're perhaps being tracked. Use a friend's phone to make an appointment to call a therapist. Tell a friend that you can trust what's really going on. Contact women's shelters and see what availability they have, perhaps if you need that. And also here is an 800 number you can contact, 1-800-799-SAFE or 1-800-799-7233. Call that number if you find yourself in a situation where you're feeling manipulated, controlled, coerced, and you feel like your life may be in danger. This is not normal. This is not healthy. Ladies, hear this. You are to be loved. You're to be honored. You're not to be abused. You're not to be coercively controlled. And remember, there's liberty in Christ. And remember, there's no excuse for abuse. You are made by God and for God, and Jesus gave you freedoms and liberties. He set you free at the cross. There's liberty in His name. So again, these are some things we all need to be aware of as we deal with those individuals who may be involved in coercive control.
There you have it from the Family Answer Man himself. I hope that this episode today of the Family Answer Man has been helpful to you. If you need to share this with somebody, definitely remember you can find this on YouTube. Share this video, share this podcast, and make sure that the women in your life that may need to hear this get the help that they might need. We hope that this episode of the Family Answer Man will encourage you to make the changes that will lead to stronger, healthier, happier families.